my friends. I'm getting started a little bit early because I want to make sure all this stuff is working. And hi, I'm Heidi. I'm going to go into my phone here and make sure this is showing up. So we have until about 2 o'clock. Oh, I see myself on my phone right there. Okay, great. Well, as we just kind of wait to get started, make sure if you want to ask any questions and you want your name to be seen, you have to just click the StreamYard approval to do that. Otherwise, you can just ask questions. I just won't know who you are. So no problem either way. But let me see here. Yes, so you just want to make sure to grant permission, as I see. All right, you guys. So we've got just a couple minutes here. If you're working along with me, I put a PDF in the Facebook group. So I pinned it to the top of the group, and it's just going to follow along step by step what I'm doing today. And if you want to go back and watch it, you can follow along with that. If you want to take notes, you can do that as well. If you're working along with me today, I'm using a curling iron. I've got some combs. I've got my pins. I've got a flexible hairspray. You can work along with me if you'd like to do that. And then if you want to answer or ask any questions, I am really excited to answer all your questions. I'm just going to do it at the end. So if you think of something as I'm working, jot it down, put it in the comments, and I'm going to go through at the end and answer any questions. And then lastly, if we have any tech issues throughout the whole deal, I'll pop into the Facebook group just in live. So if for some reason we have any issues with StreamYard that I'm using today, I will go into the Facebook group and come in live. All right. So let me answer. I can definitely answer some questions before we get started. So Zoe said, where's your favorite place to get mannequins for your updo practice? So I use a couple. I've got some cheapies on Amazon, and those are like 20, 30 bucks. And that's Hair Art. That's the brand that I've used. And then I've got a nicer one from a company called La Image, and that is German. So if you Google like LA''IMAGE, La Image mannequin, you'll find it because they're really popular and they make pretty good mannequin heads. So I recommend them as well. All right, so it's 2 o'clock. I don't want to keep anybody waiting. So really quick, if you have questions, pop them in the comments. I'm going to go ahead and answer all questions at the end. And you can approve StreamYard to let me see your name. So I think right above this video, you can click yes, approve, and then I can see your name in the chat box. So any questions you have, please put them in the comments, and I'm going to go over it at the end. So anyway, you guys, I'm so excited that you're here. I had like 104 people sign up for this, which is really exciting for me because I think when you're beginning and learning updos, there is just a lack of solid information on how to get started on your updos, right? There's tons of tutorials. There's tons of YouTube videos. We've got lots of content out there in the world. But when I'm talking about actually learning foundational steps that you can replicate on every updo that you do, that's hard to find. And so that's what I'm really passionate about and why I wanted to teach this class today and make sure you walk away with some tangible stuff that you can do as you work on updos. So we're just going to get right to it and get started. And like I said, I'm going to be able to send out this replay at the end to your email. And so if you miss some of it, you can go back and rewatch it. All right, you guys. So I'm going to go through the 5 essential steps really briefly. The 5 essential steps starting every updo is something that I sent you in your inbox. It's a free guide that I think is really helpful for anybody to use as you're working on all your updos. You get that guide, you download it, and this is a 5-step process that you can use before you start every single updo. So we're going to go ahead and get started in that today. So the first thing that I do is always look at pictures. And so we're going to pretend that our bride here brought me a picture and we've talked thoroughly about it. We've looked at more than one picture, multiple, so we can discuss a lot about it. I have more about that in the training. But the look we're going to do today is kind of a cascading low like updo that's in the back. So it's all going to kind of gather to the back and cascade down the back like that. So a little bit boho, a little bit mermaid-esque. But what I'm going to do as I teach you is just really talk through actionable steps that we can use on every updo. So even though I'm doing a very specific updo today, I'm going to walk through stuff that you can use for every updo. Okay, so let's get started. we've got the consult pick. We went through that. And as I see someone saying, hi, I would love to see in the comments where you're from. So Bridget said, hi from Turks and Caicos Islands. That sounds amazing. I'm in Minnesota. Really cold here still, totally not spring. So say hello. Feel free to say hi in the comments so you can kind of see where you're all from. Okay, so step one, consult pick. Now that we've done the consult, we know what we're working with. I'm going to go ahead and start with prepping hair. So for me, prepping looks like brushing through. And the reason I do this is not only to learn about this person's hair, to feel how thick it is, to get a feel of her texture, to know if it's oily in the scalp, if we need dry shampoo. I'm also thinking about my process. So I use this time while I am brushing it to think through my steps. Really quick, I'm looking and I see, yes, I will be emailing the PDF. So I will email everything to your email that I think is going to be beneficial for you to go back and remember things from this class and some stuff that you can do in the future. So it'll all come to your inbox. Okay, so brushing through, thinking about my process, I'm going to go ahead and start with prepping the hair with product. So I use Flexible Hold Hairspray. I love Bedhead Masterpiece. Part of the reason I like it is because it smells nice and I get really sensitive to smells. And I've been using this for years and I have not gotten too sensitive to it. So I'm going to go through and kind of saturate all of the hair with this. And I like to prep hair with hairspray first because that just creates a base for my curls to start to hold. And then I brush through it so it's not sticky, okay? So I'm brushing through. And like I said, I'm thinking about my plan. I'm thinking about if she has any weird nuances in her scalp. Does she have like a strange head shape? Does she have a low hairline, a high hairline? Like, is her hair super curly? You're just thinking about all that stuff as you're brushing through, okay? And then you're going to go through and do products on the scalp. So if they need dry shampoo, use dry shampoo in the scalp. If their hair's really fine and they need a little grip, put some texturizing powder in there. Put texture spray in here. This is the time to prep the hair before you even start. So you're going to go ahead and do that and brush all the way through. This mannequin head has so much product in it, I'm not going to do any more. But I'm just telling you, get it in the roots, get that oily hair all soaked up with the dry shampoo, get the product in there so you're ready to start. All right, you guys, now we're going on to part 3, which is sectioning. So I've looked at the picture. I know what I'm going to create. Now I've prepped the hair so it's ready for me to start working on. And now I'm going to section. Now, every updo is going to have a different section, right? Depending on what you're going to do. But I do have a standard sectioning that I think is really ideal for beginning updo stylists. And so I'm going to encourage you to try this out on almost 95% of the updos moving forward can benefit from this section. So what you want to do, first of all, is look at the head and think about where the tallest point of her head is, kind of the height, and then the front of her hairline. You're going to go about halfway into that point. So you see how it's kind of on a diagonal? You want to go about halfway there, and that's where you're going to do your first section. So I'm going to take from the very top of this section down to the top of her ear and section that out of my way. So the first one I'm doing, I'm just going to the very top of the ear, and then I'm going to take a clip and section it. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So we're going to go to that point again and go down to the top of her ear and section this away. Now this is, like I said, a technique I want you to try on all your updos moving forward if you're beginning, okay? It is a really great way to have a lot of control over your updo, work really clean and neatly, and be able to not get lost before you start. So my first 2 sections are the external hair, the fringe, the front of her hair here. We're clipping that away, okay? Now the next section that we're going to do is the crown. So I take sort of a rounded top section right here. So I'm going to start about 1.5 inches or so down. You don't want it to be too much because you're not trying to really take out a huge chunk of her hair. You're just taking enough on the top that when you pull it down into the updo, it's going to lay nicely. It's going to cover back combing. You'll be able to play with it and use it. So like I said, about 1.5 inches or so. And it's kind of a triangle, but it's a little more rounded because the shape of the head is not a triangle. The shape of the head is a sphere. So you want to make your sections kind of mimic the shape of the head. If you have too harsh of sections, then updos can sometimes look not as natural. when you're, sectioning for highlights or things like that, sometimes we have really straight, harsh sections, but with an updo, if you follow the natural shape of the hair, when you start taking it down and pinning, you're gonna get a much softer, natural look. Okay, so I'm gonna clip this away. And this is the typical sectioning pattern that you can do for almost every updo moving forward. So one on each side and this crown area. Like I said, this works for many, many updos. So now the last bit of sectioning that I'm thinking through here is I'm gonna be doing a cascading curl look down the back, okay? So I need to have a foundation. That is foundational for every updo that you do. You wanna have a foundation, okay? And then I wanna have other sections of hair that I'm gonna pull onto that foundation to create the beautiful look that I'm looking for, right? So for this particular one, because I'm gonna have that cascading look, I'm gonna make a foundation down the center and then leave sections on the side out, and that's what I'm gonna curl and use to pin in. So whatever you're doing, if you're doing a bun, if you're doing a side updo, if you're doing a high curly bun, whatever that may be, what you're thinking about is how can I divide this hair into manageable sections so I'm not overwhelmed and then I can work neatly and cleanly as I go. So sectioning is really vital to keep you working in a way that you don't get lost as you work. When you start by curling the hair, pinning it all up, doing all curls, taking them down, and then dividing again and starting to try to pin in different places, that's where things start to get messy and that's where things start to not look very organized and clean. So I highly recommend sectioning and then curling as you go when you're first learning to do updos. Once you get more advanced, you can start to cheat some of those steps, right? But in the beginning, you don't want to cheat those steps. You want to do the sectioning to make it nice and clean. Okay, to grab another clip here and clip it out of the way. So I hope that makes sense. That's why I do a lot of sectioning in the beginning when you're just starting out. It will really save you. Okay, so this is gonna be our foundational section down the middle. And then I've got two external sections, and this is what we're gonna curl to bring back. So this is the section, and this is our basis for starting out. So we prepped the hair, now we sectioned, now we're moving on to thinking about texture. So texture, when I talk about texture, I'm talking about what kind of curl pattern are you using? Are you having a curl pattern at all? So when I think texture, I think, are you having tight curls? Are you having big curls? Does she want waves going back? Does she want kind of like a beachy look? Maybe she wants it really clean and smooth. Those are the things that you're thinking about with texture, and it'll help you decide your tool. So for this particular look, I want kind of large, soft updo curls that will cascade back. So I'm going to use an 1.25 inch curling iron, a traditional curling iron, because I want it to be kind of soft and swept. If I wanted to have something, for example, that was really highly textured, more kind of at her scalp, I would use a smaller curling iron and start at the scalp to curl. But because she wants it soft, I know that the texture, I can use that 1.25 inch curling iron. So that's texture, that's number 4. And then number 5 is going to be volume. Now I talk about these things before we even start pinning, because these are the kind of things you want to think about before you work on your updo. If you have those things in mind before you start actually creating, you will learn to create really beautiful updos that are aesthetically pleasing from the front and that your bride really likes. Even if you're not nailing like the minute details of how she wants the back pinned or something, if you can get the texture and the volume right and the pieces around her face, that's like half the battle, okay? So going back to volume, we're talking about how big she wants it. Does she want a lot of volume? Does she want it really smooth? What are we talking about? So for this look, I just want it to be kind of a relaxed volume, not too over the top, but I don't want it to be flat. So therefore, I'm gonna think about doing a little bit of back combing when I'm pulling down the top, and I'm gonna be using a loose tension as I pull the hair back. So I'm not gonna be pulling hair really tight. I'm gonna be keeping everything really soft and really loose as we work. So those are briefly, the first 5 steps that I sent you in your email, the guide, and you can have that. I'll send it again, so make sure you guys have it. Now we're gonna move on to actually starting to pin and work on our updo. So I did a little pre-prep on a different mannequin so we can move along. So I'm gonna switch. So we'll put this scale down. This is the mannequin that is La Image that I was talking about from Germany. So they're a little spendy. They're more in the like maybe close to $200 range, where those ones are like 30. But it's nice long hair. She's got shoulders. So she's got some perks that the other ones don't. Okay, so I have sectioned this the exact same way that I told you that I just did on the other one. So it's all sectioned and ready to go. And now we're gonna start actually creating our updo. So every updo has a foundation. It does not matter even if the hair is all down. If the hair is all down, the foundation is back combing. There's a foundation for every updo because updos have to stay, okay? So that's one of the first things that you need to think about when you are looking at a picture and trying to break down an updo. Where is that foundation? So for this one, because it's all cascading and going down the back, the foundation is going to be right down the center, and that's what I'm bringing all the hair into. So I'm going to start out by using texture spray because I want this to be kind of grippy. It's going to hold my bobby pins. I don't want the hair to be slippery and smooth. It needs to have some grip. And I'm going to be pulling it out to make it kind of full so I can create a bigger updo in the back. So I'm going to spray texture spray throughout this section. And one thing I didn't mention is, how did I decide how much hair to leave in this middle section? Well, if the hair is really, really thick, you can kind of divide it evenly. If the hair is really thin, you probably want to do a smaller section down the middle because you're going to need more hair to pull into the curls. So thinking about the thickness of the hair will help you decide how to section, because you need to think, how much hair do I need to have left out to kind of decorate and make my creation of my updo? And how much hair can I afford to keep in for a foundation? And if you don't have a lot of hair to work with, that's when you can start using hair padding, extensions, things like that. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is create a ponytail. And I'm gonna tell you right off the bat, whenever I do these trainings, my updos tend to shift a little bit towards where I'm standing. So I will tell you right away that I'm gonna be a little lopsided. The texture spray that I love is, this is Kenra, it's dry texture spray. And I like it because it's really versatile, good on lots of different hair textures. But pretty much every major brand of hair supplies makes a texture spray now. So it's worth trying a few and experimenting and to see what you like and what works well on your people. Okay, so small clear elastic. This is my first foundational step. And I'm gonna flip this into the topsy tail. So I think a lot of us probably have seen this on tutorials, but you just flip it over. So I'm reaching my fingers in, grabbing the hair and pulling it through. I used to have a tool for this when I was like 8. It was called a topsy tail, and there was a stick that did it. Now I just use my fingers. All right, so now that I have this first step, I'm gonna go ahead and pull this out. So keep in mind here that this hair right here is not really gonna be seen. This is your foundation. So it doesn't have to be super neat. This isn't going to be an external view for anybody. This is all internal. But I want it to be full because whatever you do on the inside of an updo, that's what's going to be seen on the outside of an updo as far as size. So however big I make this on the inside, that's how big it's going to look on the outside. So I want it to be big and full. That's why I am pulling this out, okay? So step one is the first ponytail, okay? Now, the next one is going to be taking 2 sections on each side, and I'm going to do another ponytail. So this is kind of a quick and easy way to do this foundation because you're not trying to make it look too pretty. You just want to get it done to make the foundation, okay? So I'm going to do another ponytail, and I'm just wrapping the elastic around 2 times so it's not too tight and I have room to work. And I'm going to flip this one out again too. So I'm going to go up in between and flip it through. And you can use a little more texture spray if you like, if it's not grippy enough. And I'm just pulling this out, tightening it up. And if it gets a little frizzy, it's not a problem because like I said, this is going to be internal. What you do want to make sure you're doing just as you're working is taking these nice clean sections one piece at a time. That does help just keep your work clean and help you not to get lost in your work, but this doesn't have to be perfect, okay? Now that you've got 2 done, now for the next ponytail, you want to grab this underneath piece and you're going to bring it around to the front. So I'm going with this underneath piece here. I'm dividing it in half so I can bring it to the front, and I'm going to grab a little more hair on each side to bring with me. Now, I'll tell you what else. When you're making foundations, there's lots of ways to make foundations for updos, okay? You can do buns, you can use hair padding, you can do braiding. So another way to do this updo is you could actually do a French braid that you've pulled out loose down the center. I'm not doing a French braid because I want this to be full and really textured. A French braid isn't going to give you as much texture and as much fullness as it could. So that's why I'm choosing to do this way of a foundation, because I know how I want it to look at the end. But some of those things you don't know until you experiment. And so that just comes with practice, with doing more updos, with adding more bridesmaids, getting the work in so you can experiment with things. Okay, now that I have this in, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going through the entire ponytail, grabbing it, flipping it through. I'll texture spray it and pull it out again. So like I said, the more you do updos, the more you learn. Updos is a game of practice. It's a game of trying things out. But like I said in the beginning of this video, or this training, I really want to teach you these really, really foundational skills that you can use as you work in every updo. All right, Courtney said, would you do the topsy tail for every updo as a foundation instead of back combing lower than the crown? Maybe, maybe not. That's one of those questions that I feel like is subject to what you're trying to achieve. Topsy tail method is really nice for textured updos. So the ones that are a little more boho, that are kind of messier, that are more undone, that you want a lot of interest in, topsy tails are great for that. They're nice, like you said, mentioned about, rather than back combing, they're nice because they do give you this kind of pop and this lift. But if you want a cleaner updo and you're looking for something smoother, neater, back combing is better in my opinion, because you have more control. When you topsy tail it and pull it out, sometimes depending on the hair texture, it can look messy even when you don't want it to look like clean messy. You know what I mean? You want it to look not frizzy, you want it to look undone. And that's what these are good for. But sometimes it's just back combing is better. So the answer really is yes and no. And like I said, that's a good one to experiment with. But I would say if you have not done the topsy tail method, try it. Try it a few times and see how you like it. Okay, so I flipped this one out again. I'm just following the same pattern. And you can see we're creating a nice foundation. And this is actually kind of cute in and of itself. But we're just going to use this as our foundation today. So I'm just dividing the hair behind, pulling it to the front, adding another ponytail. I feel like I've seen this technique pop up in the last couple years, and I've seen lots of different ways to do it, lots of different creative and cool updos with it. So it's fun to experiment with and to kind of see what you can do. I will tell you that like on an updo with a mannequin head, this looks fantastic. It pulls out really nice. However, if you're working on someone who has a really, really fine, thin hair, this is hard and it doesn't always look that good. You have to use a lot of product. What if they have really frizzy hair? What product would you start with? So if the hair is like crazy frizzy, just a lot of texture, what I would do is have them blow dry it first, and then you're gonna have to do a little bit more smoothing as you work. So with this section, you won't have to do as much smoothing because like I said, this section here is gonna be hidden by most of your curls on the side. But the sides here that we're gonna start working on now, you're gonna have to do more smoothing if they have frizzy hair. All right, you guys, so this is our foundation, okay? Done the foundation, there's texture spray throughout. This is gonna hold my pins really nicely. So I'm gonna use my flexible hold hairspray and just give it a couple sprays. And now we're done with that section. I'm not gonna touch it again. That's a little rule of thumb I have with doing updos. Once you place it, don't touch it. If you need to move it, be very careful, and be very intentional as you work, but do not move stuff around once you've placed it and you like it. Okay, guys, so now that we've done the foundation, we're gonna curl and pin the internal section. So that's our two sections on the side here. These are gonna be curled and we're gonna pin them in. And I'm gonna do it one section at a time and one section of hair at a time, okay? So I'm not gonna go ahead and curl all this at first and then pin. I'm gonna curl as I go. So we're gonna start with the top, and I'm taking just about, 1 inch or so sections here. And what I love to do is use hairspray on a section, this is tedious, but it will help you get your updos to be really smooth and beautiful when you're just starting out. Comb through it, and then you're going to curl towards the inside of the updo. So I'm curling away from the face towards the inside with my curling iron. So one at a time, okay? Now that I have this part curled, I'm going to pin this. So we're going to do this side. I'm going to just pin one at a time. You're going to kind of see how I would pin, and then we'll move on to the other side. So I like flexible pins. That is, these are Ginny Lou. They're called Stay Right, STA-RITE. And I'm going to just take my first one. I'm going to follow the pattern of the curl. So I'm going to twist it another time. And I'm just going to pin it into this first twist that I have here. So this is what I call grip pinning. I open my pin a little bit, grab the hair with it, and then I'm going to just push it down and kind of put it right into the center. So I just put it right into there, and I'm just going to leave that. Now I'm going to go to the next one. In my updo course that I have, I talk about 3 different types of pinning that I use. So I'll talk about them briefly here. I'm taking my next section now, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm spraying. I'm not taking the entire thing. I'm leaving a little bit here because I want to have some layered effect. But this is one of those things where, you know, I could tell you this is exactly what you do. You have to take 5 sections and you curl each section and pin them in. But no, it's going to depend on who you're working on. You might need 10 sections of hair here. You might need 11. You might need 5. It depends on how thick the hair is. It depends on how textured you want it to look. This is where the creative part comes in. So what I feel like I'm trying to really hit home with you is I can teach you something foundational, like how to curl, how to pin, how to section, and you'll take that knowledge and apply it to a variety of different updos. Okay, so I'm going to grab this hair again with a pin. I'm opening it, grabbing it, and then pushing it into the next section. So I just pin this one right here, okay? Now I have this section left here that I left in front. I'm going to go ahead and use that. Now we talked a little bit about the volume, right? So because she wants it to be soft and we don't want to have it really, really tight, I'm using really loose tension, excuse me, and I'm letting the hair guide me. So what I mean by that is after I curl it, letting it go, not touching the curl too much, I am not pulling the hair up. I'm not pulling it down. I'm bringing it directly from how it grows. And I'm softly swooping it back in a way that looks really natural. And I'm keeping loose tension on it because I don't want it to be tight. I want it to be soft and loose. If I wanted this to be really big, I might add some back combing. But for this one, we're just going to do it more natural, but I'm just letting the hair guide me. And let me see if I can show you a little clear how I do it here. Opening my pin, grabbing the hair and sliding it in, just like so. And you can hold your thumb on this pin and pull this hair if you want it to be a little tighter, or you can hold the thumb here and you can pull it out if you want it to be a little bit looser. Whatever you do is fine. You just really want to make sure that you're being very careful. You have a soft touch and you're not pulling the actual curl so much as you are holding on to the pin and just taking one section to slightly pull it out. So that's just like a tip in general as you're doing updos, is you really want to make sure that you are really having a gentle touch on the hair, because that will help your updo stay really neat and clean. I see all the time people asking, how do you create frizz-free updos, frizz-free updos, frizz-free updos? And really, the key to that is just having a really gentle touch and being really, really intentional as you pin and work. All right, so this last piece, I don't want to pull up, I don't want to pull down. I just want it to softly go in. So you can see here, you can kind of see naturally where this wants to go. So this is a good spot for it right here. And this is up to your creative eye, right? This is not necessarily a formula. I'm pushing this down into the binder that I use, the elastic that I use to secure this. So when I'm pinning down here, I'm no longer on her head. I'm not pushing anything into her scalp. I'm pushing it into the foundation we made. Because there's elastics in there and because there is a lot of texture spray in there, you have ways to push the bobby pins down to give it a good grip, okay? So that's why we do that. So you can see this is really soft, right? Looks really natural, and it's just starting to cover all that foundation. So if I like it and it looks good, I spray it. All right, this is my tricky side. So we're gonna switch over here, and I'm gonna take this out, and I'm gonna do this side. I'm just gonna do it a little faster because now you know what I just did. Now, two things here. One, I would not curl it all before I pin, because I think when you're first starting out, you want a lot of control. I would go one at a time, but I pre-curl this for the sake of time. The other thing that I would do that is key when you're working on beginning updos is you want to go back and forth from each side as you work. So I know I just showed you all one side, and then I just did this side, and now I'm going to do this side. It's going to be fine for today, okay? But if I were doing this on an actual person, I would do the top on this side, then I would come and do the top on this side, then I would do the next section, I'd work back and forth. And the reason I do that is because it creates balance. So the more you can go back and forth and work evenly, the more you're going to have a really balanced updo that's not going to come out wonky and lopsided. So just think about that as you're working on your updos. You just want to think about working evenly on both sides. So again, I'm grabbing hair here and I'm pushing it down into the updo. Let me see if I can turn her here. One section at a time. So grabbing it, pulling it across, and you can see this is all my loose pieces here, and here's my foundation. So I'm just going to go ahead and pin this right into my foundation. Grabbing the hair and pushing it down into those binders. So I loosened this one with my other finger, and then we're going to just work our way down. Now for a bride who's going to be getting their hair done at, 7 a.m. or something like that, and isn't going to be, having pictures done until 5 p.m. and she's got to go take pictures outside, security in the hair is huge. You do not want things falling out. So my problem with a lot of updos that I see that are quick tutorials or that you think look really, really beautiful, sometimes they're done just for photo shoots and just for pictures, and they're not practical for actual wedding days, because you need to have hair that will actually stay put. So you really want to think about, as you're pinning, how can I secure this hair so it stays? So pushing bobby pins into the elastic is really what is going to help lock in the style. All right, you guys. So now that I have both of my internal sides curled and pinned, I can spray this side, and I can use my hand to bring in the flyaways. You can use a tail comb. So taking your tail comb and just smoothing it in, however you want to do it. What I have going on now is these ends. So what I'm going to do with these ends is follow my curl patterns to pin them in to this foundation. So what I mean by following the curl pattern is I'm not taking a curl like this that's flipped out and bending it this way. I'm going to keep it in this shape. So I'm just following these curls, and I'm going to do a push pinning technique. So that means I'm just taking my bobby pin and I'm grabbing maybe a little bit of hair if it's thin, or just pushing it right directly into it, and I'm just pushing down. So I'm not even going to grab much hair. It's just helping to kind of direct the hair and have it stay where I want to go. So for example, this piece right here, I want it to stay put here. So I'm just going to take my pin and I'm going into the curl, and then I'm going to feel into this updo behind and push it down into the foundation. And you can always kind of loosen it up with your fingers a little bit like that once you've pinned it in. I like this technique better than using open hairpins like this, because these can slide out really easily. There's a time and a place for these, but when you're starting out updos, try this technique out and see how you like it. So these hairs down here, because I curled this side in this way and this side in this way, they're kind of crossing now that they're in the middle, which is great because that's going to create some natural, a natural look here, okay? So I'm just going to kind of place the curls, and this is totally not a specific technique. This is just using your eye to decide what you think looks aesthetically pleasing. So I just like to make sure that I'm hiding all my pins, that you don't see anything, and that they are getting solidly into this foundation. And once you start to get towards the bottom, you don't have to pin as much because this style is more flowy. And the other thing I wanted to mention about the foundation and that bride that has her hair done, really early in the morning, is the foundation of this is solid, okay? So if she's out in the wind and a few of these wispies fly away, that is not gonna make or break this updo. So that is okay. As long as you have a solid foundation that is not going to fall apart, having some hair in the back or wispy pieces like this, you don't want them to fall out, but if they do, it's gonna be okay. All right, you guys, so this is the internal part of our updo. So now that we've done that, recall I said you wanna leave out your crown. So the crown section is what is gonna help you to create something really beautiful on the top. Now going back to the question that you said, do you wanna use topsy tails rather than back combing? I would not use a topsy tail technique on this top piece because you're gonna see that kind of weird dip in the middle here, okay? So keeping this top crown out, you have all this hair here to kind of play with, to make sure you're getting the right lift on the top, to create the right shape from the profile. If you had taken this right away and stuck this into this foundation, you don't have any leverage anymore to work on this part and to make it really beautiful. So I always leave this crown part out for after I've done this because I really want to be able to use this to just create a nice shape. That goes for if you're doing a low bun, a side updo, even braiding. You can leave this out and then kind of pull it down and pin this into the braid. So leaving this out will give you a lot of control at the end to create a look that your bride really wants. So a couple things here. We could do a lot of different looks. I think for the sake of time, a smoother look makes the most sense. But if you wanted to have a more textured look on top, you could divide this into sections like so. So I'm taking a section of this and I could twist this, okay, and pull it out and pin this in to this part. But like I said, for the sake of time today, we're just gonna make it smooth. So I'll tell you that I went through and I did a little back combing right in here just to give a little bit of lift in this crown. And now I'm just smoothing it over and I'm gonna lay it in my hand before I do any pinning. So I like to do that first so I can make sure I have the lift that I want, that I can get as much volume that I need in here and that it looks good for the bride. So you can have the bride look in the mirror and say, how do you like this level of lift? Do you want more? Do you want less? If she wants more, you can go through and add more back combing. If she wants less, then you can comb through it harder and kind of get rid of some of that height. And I would curl this section by section as well, depending on how you want to stylize this top. I pre-curled some of it, so we've got some bend in the ends here. All right, so it's in my hand. I am going to take my flexible hold hairspray and go over the top. And you can use a comb like this with the metal prongs at the end to kind of smooth this out and make sure it is following the pattern of the rest of the hair. So I'm letting this fall and follow the shape here. You can see on each side, it's not going up. It's just following the shape of the rest of it. And I'm gonna give it a twist. And I'm just gonna pull this out loosely because I want it to fall really softly over the top and look really natural. And if you are not feeling super adept in like pinning before you finish styling, use alligator clips, use these little pin curl clips to pin it in place. And then you can go through and kind of tweak, okay? So you're pinning it loosely. You can look on each side. You can stand in front, make sure that the volume is right, that it looks good on all sides before you actually do any pinning. You can pin it like this too before you check in with your bride, so then you can make adjustments as you go. So I love to use pins like this or clips like this before I actually use pins. Okay, so now that it's in, I'm gonna put a few pins in here just to make sure it stays. And I'm just pushing them in. So I'm opening them a little bit, but I'm not laying them flat across. I'm just going in with like 3 or 4 and kind of getting the shape that I want. So now that it's pinned in loosely, albeit, see it looks really beautiful, but it's not super secure yet. Now that it's pinned how I want, and I know that I like it from the sides and the front, now I'll go back through and make sure it's really secure. So I'm gonna kind of go under and pin in flatter in a foundational pin. So I'm pushing my pin flat against the head under this twist. See how it's twisted just a little bit? I'm gonna go inside and then push this flat. And that will create more of a solid base for me. So now that I've had this part done, now you can get creative with how you wanna pin this. So I'm just gonna take my sections of curls and kind of think about how I'd like them to go. So like this one's kind of naturally wanting to go in this direction. So I'm just gonna continue on coaxing that over and I'll pin that in. So a lot of the way how I choose to pin curls is very much based on the hair itself that I'm working with and how it's curling and how I think it will look best as I go. So like I was mentioning earlier, we've got the techniques. You've got the techniques for pinning this hair. And now you can be creative in how you actually do your pinning. But I want you to notice that I'm pinning really softly and I'm being really intentional about where I pin. So I take a curl and I'm not just kind of pinning at random. I'm looking to see where, where I need to add more depth to the hair, where a curl could fill in. I feel like the middle could use a few. So I'm going to pull this over to the middle and pin it in. But that's kind of the name of the game, is as you're getting better at updos and learning and growing and kind of refining your skills, you will just start to develop an eye for what looks beautiful. And sometimes, brides give you some creative freedom to do things more that you like. And sometimes they're like, no, lady, I want exactly this picture with exactly this curl, which is challenging. But I'll tell you what, I've been doing bridal hair for almost 20 years, okay? And I have found that most brides aren't looking for a specific replica of a picture. Most brides really like the overall aesthetic of a certain photo. And they don't necessarily mean they want this curl here and this curl there. They just like how it lays in the front. They like the shape. They like certain things about it that isn't necessarily an exact replica. So just keep that in mind as you are asking questions and working with brides. Okay, so you can see now I have placed those into the updo in the back, and we've got our nice smooth top. And so our last thing to work on now is going to be the external sections that we've clipped away. So I'm going to start over here to show you. This is her thicker side. So what I want you to think about now is, because of your consult, you should know how much hair you want to leave out in the fringe. So some people are going to want a heavy fringe. Some people are going to want nothing at all. Some people might actually just want the hair, pulled all the way away from her head. That's what you need to find out in the consult. This mannequin has really long hair, so I'm not going to leave any out. If I leave it out, it's going to be really long and look super 90s, which is kind of in style right now anyway, so maybe that's okay. But for the sake of this tutorial, we're not going to do that. All right, you guys, so I have curled this in advance. Like I said, I would not curl this in advance. I would curl section by section, and that will help you make sure you're getting the right volume and you're working really neatly and cleanly. So what I'm going to do now is take one curl at a time. I'm going to go back and forth. So I'm going to take one here, pin it in. One on this side, pin it in. And we're going to work to create balance, okay? So by curling one section at a time, you're going to have a lot of control over how this looks. And I'm continuing to use this grip pinning technique where I'm opening my bobby pin a little bit, grabbing it, and then pushing it down into the updo. Now, if I put it in and I don't like it, this is the time to take it out and fix it. So I put this in. It's making this curl fly out weird. So I'm just going to start again. So I'm going to take this out, make sure I didn't leave behind any frizz, and I'm going to try a new spot. So that is something that I recommend as you're working on your updos, is if you put something in that you don't like, fix it right away and correct the mistake, okay? Because going back and trying to undo a bunch at once is where updos get really messy and get really frizzy. Okay, so we did one. I'm going to do one more on this side before I go to the other because this side is so much thicker. So we're going to do one more. And for interest, I'm just going to lift this one up a little bit higher. So again, this is kind of where your creativity lands. And you can kind of decide what you think looks pretty. Now, I told you in the very beginning that I always leave this front section out. And I leave it out when I do this a lot. I did this a lot when I first started doing updos. And the reason is because I wanted to make sure I not only had hair to be in the front that would, come down and make the hair look really natural, but I also wanted to make sure that I had some hair that I guess I'll call decorative hair that I could use in the back to cover bobby pins, to create something interesting, to start to, maybe make a braid or make a twist or something like that. The thing is that if you don't leave anything in the front, sometimes you get a little stuck in the back. So all of a sudden you're like, oh gosh, I don't have I have this section that's a little bit off and I need to pull something in to make it more even. That's what you have the front of this hair for. You can pull it back and use it to make it even. Okay, so something else that I thought about as I'm doing this. So I pulled this section back, right? I put it in a pin right here. Her hair is long, her hair is a little bit heavy. If I just have the one pin here, that might not stay. So I like to take these pins and go directly into the curl. If I can get a little closer here. So I'm going to go right into this curl and I'm going to push towards the scalp and then push away from me toward the front of the face, upward. And so that's going to add a little extra security right in that spot without seeing the pin. So I will do that throughout the whole front section because that ensures that it's not going to slip down. It also ensures that it's not going to fall out because I've got multiple points of pinning. And it's a good way to do it where you don't actually see the pinning. So that's a push pinning technique that I like to do. So this is, when you're working on the side, you're thinking about what is the bride wanting? Does she want her ears showing? Does she not want her ears showing? Does she want it pulled tight over her ears? Does she like it really loose? Those are the kind of things that you want to think about when you're working on the front of the hair. How the ear is going to be, how it's going to look around the face, how much she wants left out, all those things. So by leaving this hair out on the side to play with, then you have hair to just work on the front and you have hair that you can also pull into the back. Okay, so one other thing that I'm doing when I'm deciding where to pin is I'm kind of looking for what I would say is like a blank spot. So if you step back at the updo and kind of look at it from all angles, you can say, oh gosh, okay, I can see like this piece is missing or there's a spot here that needs to be filled in. And that's what you can really use the front of these pieces for, to fill in. All right, so I've kind of got that part done and I've got one more piece here that I'm going to pin and one more piece on this side that I'm going to pull in as well. And then we will kind of finish up by looking over the back and how we can finish pinning that. Once you really like your work, as you go, you can use a flexible hairspray. So I'll just go in like so and use my fingers to kind of smooth down any frizzy spots once I really like what I've done. So I like to use flexible hairspray as I work, and that really helps to ensure that the style is locking in where I like it. And it just helps me make updos frizz-free as I'm working. So if you're kind of smoothing each section as you go, that is what really is going to help to lock in your style and make sure it's really, truly frizz-free. Okay, so this side as well. Spray a little bit, make sure those flyaways are in off the neckline here. Now, what I've got left, I've done the front here, so you can see the sides are pinned here. I've got the sides pinned here. Now, I'm going to work on these ends. Right before I do that, what I want you to always think about doing before you go through and really tuck in ends or polish up a bun or something is you want to just step around and look at all angles of your updo. So when I'm looking at the front of her, I'm like, this is like a little full over on this side. So I would go in and take that in a bit. And the way I would take in something that's too full is I would put those pins on the side. So let me just show you, because I think that's a good thing to learn. You see how this side is really kind of off her head? Some people might like that fullness, but others might not. So if you want to bring that in, what you can do is use the push pinning technique to grab hair here. So I'm grabbing it, pulling it down. So you can see it's pulling it away from her face. And then I'm turning and pushing back towards her face. And that will just pull this flatter and tighter into her head right there without having to go back and change anything. So you can use pins to help change your style. You don't have to always take something out completely. You can just use pins to kind of manipulate things. Sometimes you can just pull it a little bit, tweak it. Don't overwork yourself. So I would say, when you're working with brides and they want to make a change, try doing little tweaks first before you say, oh gosh, let me just take this all out. You want to do small things at a time. So you can really nail in what they're asking you to do. Sometimes you think, oh, they don't like this bun at all, I got to take the whole thing out. When actually, maybe they just wanted a few pieces left out of it or something like that. So you really want to ask a lot of questions so you know. Okay, so you guys, what we've got left here is this internal curl. And you can see that because it's already curled, because we used really nice, smooth sections, these aren't frizzy, messy curls. These are going to be really easy to pull in and kind of pin as a group into our cascading updo. So what I mean by that is I'm not going to go through and take necessarily individual pieces here. I'm going to kind of follow the pattern of the curl. I'm opening my pin a little bit. I'm just going to go through and pin it up into the foundation that I made, and I can feel it hitting some other bobby pins. I can feel it hitting those elastics, and that's exactly what you want. You want to feel it hitting something where you know it's connecting. So I'm just kind of standing back so I can see how it lays, and then deciding how I want to put this in. So the nice thing about this look too is you've got a lot of options for decoration back here, which is lovely. So this style is really open to your interpretation, right? You have a lot of flexibility with how to work it at the end here. I don't want to necessarily see how this is off, and then we have our ponytail down here. I want to connect these. So I'm just going to go through and take my bobby pin and pull it in here and put it into this bottom elastic here, and that will just connect those. So I'm going to go up into the updo instead of down this time. So I'm taking these top curls that I feel like are a little wonky, and I'm holding them onto the elastic. I'm pushing my bobby pin into it, and then I'm going to go up into the elastic. And that just secures it to itself so it doesn't pop out like that. You can use another elastic too at the bottom if you want when you're first starting out, but I think pins look a little more subtle. Now, when you have that all done, what you can do here is go through, look around. This is what we're checking for. We've already checked for balance. Now at the end, when we're doing detailing, you're looking at these ends. Do you have any ends that need to be recurled or smoothed? Do you have any pins showing? So if there's pins showing, I'm going to show you a couple of techniques to hide them, because that is one of the biggest pet peeves I have. Okay, so let me show you here. You guys can start thinking about your questions because I'm going to start answering. So see this pin right here? Maybe you can't see it, but there's a little pin showing. Instead of moving the pin entirely, I just literally slide hair over it. So you can pull hair over it and then lock it in place. And we can do the same thing if you see pins on the side. So I see some pins here, and what you can do is pull other hair that's near it, pull it kind of up and over. So you can just take your hair and kind of pull and tweak and see how you can hide the pins with other hair that's surrounding it. So you don't necessarily have to change it. Just use the end of your tail comb to kind of manipulate and pull the hair so that you can hide those pins. Now you can also use, I didn't talk about this that much, but say you have like a solid foundation of bobby pins right across the top. You can use the hair that you saved out in the front to pull across and cover the back. Okay. So you can use the hair in the front to cover the bobby pins essentially. So that is our updo, you guys. And let's see. I want to make sure I'm not missing any questions. So if you've got questions, please pop them in the comments and I will answer them. Let's make sure I don't have a bunch here. Okay. This is our updo. I think it's really beautiful. There's lots of different ways that you can go about this, but if you go over those steps that we talked about at the beginning, I think it will serve you really well. I just wanted to give a brief synopsis of myself. So I do updos, I do wedding hair. I've got a wedding hair and makeup company in Minnesota, but I also love to teach. When I was first starting out, I felt like huge lack of information in the bridal hair industry. I didn't learn anything in school. I couldn't learn anything from my peers. And now that there's a lot more available to us on YouTube, there's a lot more available to us on Instagram, TikTok, all those things. I'm seeing a lot of inspiration, which is fantastic, but I'm not seeing a lot of techniques that I can use for every updo that I'm doing, right? So that's what I'm really passionate about teaching. And I've got a beginner's updo course that I am totally selling, and I'm not ashamed about selling you this course because I think it's really valuable. So I've been working on it, I've been creating it, and I think it's really going to change the way that you do updos and give you a lot of knowledge to really launch yourself into the bridal world and feel really confident to do updos and to start to make a career out of that. So I'm going to be sending you guys that in your email. So you guys have access to that. I have a advanced, like a full comprehensive course, and then kind of like a mini course that will really help you just nail some things down when you're starting out on updos. Any tips for natural curly wavy hair? Yeah, so naturally curly hair is some of my favorite stuff to work with. Favorite hair to work with. And the reason that I like to is because you already have beautiful curls. So my biggest tip for working with curly hair is to not actually change the curls themselves, but enhance them. So look at the natural curl that you're working with. Find a curling iron size that matches that and use the curling iron just to shape and smooth and enhance the curls that they already have. And you can do the exact same sectioning, the exact same techniques to pull it in. Just don't create a new curl. Wavy hair, kind of tricky depending on some wavy hair you can just pull in and you don't have to do much to because it looks really beautiful. Some you have to enhance. Thank you for this. It's so beautiful. Thank you. Any tips about humidity? So to be totally honest, I am not the best source for humidity because I am in Minnesota and we are humid, in a little bit in the summer, not a ton, but I use anti-humidity spray. I use flexible hold hairspray and texture hair combined, and that really helps with humidity. So if you take a section of hair, hairspray it, and texture spray over it, the combination of the two really lock in the frizz and help the hair stay together. So I recommend using a texture spray with a flexible hairspray because it's light and it's not going to weigh the hair down, but it will help lock in those styles. And then using kind of a heavier shine spray will weigh down some of the hairs that want to fly up when you're finishing products. Let's see here. What if you're working with coily textured hair? So that's similar to what the curly hair is that I was talking about. If the hair is really, really coily, really tight, I would probably not change the curl at all. I would just use their hair and I would use smoothing serum. I would use products to help smooth those coils and pull them into the shape of the updo. Now you're going to get a totally different look with this, right? So you just have to talk with the person that you're doing their hair to see, are they okay with the updo changing a little bit and adapting towards what their hair looks like. The other thing I would change is in the beginning when I talked about brushing through, I'm not brushing through really tight, coily textured hair. You want to just maybe, I don't even pick through it. I use my tail comb to section. So I'm going to section it out in the same way. And then I'll use the tail comb to separate pieces as I need. So I'm not using a pick to pick through the whole thing. I'm just going to take the section that I need to pin at a time with my tail comb and use the natural curl to create the shape of the updo. So that's kind of how I work with that. These are good questions, guys. I will stick around a little bit longer if you want to keep them coming. But otherwise, what you can expect from me now is I'm going to send you my updo guide for beginner, and that's like a mini course if you'd like to get that. I'm doing a special. It's normally $47, and I'm doing it for you guys for $27. And that's going to be Kind of similar to today, just broken down even in more granular steps so you can really nail it, especially if you're really new to updos. And then I also have my Foundations of Updo course, and that is $197, and that is an 8-module course that you can just go through at your own pace. We talk about all the different pinning techniques. We talk about products. We talk about tools I use. We talk about different types of curls. We talk about different ways to do foundations. We talk about half updos, down dos, sleek dos, messy dos, all those different things. So I will, yes, I'm going to send you guys this live to your email so you have a copy of it. I'm going to send you all the resources I have to your email so you have copies of that as well. And because I'm kind of new to StreamYard, which is what I'm using today, I think I can let this live in the Facebook group, but I need to find that out. So I will try to make sure that I can have this in as well. Jennifer asks, how many or typically how long should we be allowing ourselves to work on our brides? So for me, I give myself an hour and I do 40 minutes for everybody else. Now, what I want you to do when you're first starting out is be really honest with the people that are hiring you. So if you know that this is going to take you an hour and a half, don't say an hour because you feel like that's typical. Tell the people that are hiring you an honest amount of time that you feel like you really need. And if that means you have to do less people because they don't have as much time in the beginning, that's fine. If you try to cut yourself down on timing and you're speeding through, you're going to get stressed, you're going to get anxious, and the bride's going to feel that, your clients will feel that, and that's really challenging. So one of my biggest tips for you when you're starting out as a new stylist is to be super, super honest about what your capacity is, what you can do, your timing, even the updos that you can do. If someone brings you something and you're like, oh gosh, like I just actually have no idea how to do this, be honest about that. You don't want to have somebody hire you and then totally be flopping around and not have any clue on what to do, and they're disappointed, you're disappointed, all that stuff. So like I said, I like an hour for myself, but you kind of got to know your own pace and know what your abilities are. Okay, do you do braiding in any of your courses? So I touch on braiding like a little bit more, like how to do like a soft braid that's going into the updo, but that is something that I don't have specific courses on. So like I said, I kind of incorporate braiding into some of my updos and more about the overall techniques of it, but I'm not teaching specific, like this is a fishtail braid, this is a waterfall braid, this is those kind of braids. Most of my courses right now are really, really focused on like a lot of these foundational skills that you can use in a ton of updos moving forward, not just one specific updo, because I feel like that was what was really lacking for me. Another story that I have is I spent time once paying for an updo course, and I just popped that on there. Sorry, I didn't know that I could do that. There we go. Okay, I spent time paying for an updo course. You know, I spent like $500 for this course. I flew to Arizona. I paid for tickets, whatever, and it was a good experience, and I'm glad I went, and I met some people, but it was just teaching me like 3 updos, and one of them was really not bridal to me, and the other 2 were okay, but they weren't that translatable to brides. And so I felt like, gosh, I just paid a lot of money to learn just 3 specific updos that I can't really use this in my real work. Like I picked up a few techniques and a few different things that I could use in maybe a different updo, but it wasn't as valuable as it could have been. And so where I feel like the value that I'm trying to bring to you through free workshops, through my YouTube channel, through this Facebook group that you guys are a part of now, is these foundational techniques that are really translatable to lots of updos, because not only are there so many updos, you guys, but there's tons of updo, there's tons of hair types, and there's hair lengths, and there's just so many variables when it comes to updos. If you just know how to do one thing, that doesn't mean it's going to look like that on someone with a different hair type than the person you learned it on. So I really like to learn these foundational techniques and to know how to apply them to lots of different people. So Bridget says, doing brides over 40 years and still learning more and more. I'm a good teacher. Oh, thank you so much. You know, I think so many of us have so much to offer each other as hairstylists. And that is the other purpose I really have for our Facebook group is you've been doing hair for 1 year, for 40 years, whatever it may be. we're always learning, right? And because this is creative, everyone has a different approach, okay? So you might do something one way and someone might do something another way, and you can really learn from the way that they do it and start practicing and applying it in your own way for your own people. So I love the community of hairstylists. I love learning from others, and I think we all have something valuable to offer. So if you're just starting out, just know that it takes time, that you will come into your own, and just, watch and learn from as many people as possible, because you'll gather a lot and be able to hone in on your own skill. All right, you guys, this was awesome. Let's see. Oh, how would I lock in a veil on this updo? I had to join a little late, forgive me. Oh no, I did not cover that. That's a good question. So for this one, I would put a veil here. And typically veils right now come on wire, like a wire comb, okay? So they're really easy to slide in. So if I go too low into here, I'm gonna run into a lot of bobby pins. That's gonna be tricky. I would focus on sliding it into this section here that I know doesn't have a lot of bobby pins, because it is gonna be more smoother going in. So if you have a good back comb, you have a good solid base in there, when you go in with your veil, you're going toward the scalp and then you're pushing it down. You just kind of wiggle it in. It's not going to mess up your updo, because you have created this great solid foundation to put that in. Even those plastic combs slide in really smoothly right here. And if you need, you can kind of lock it in with the open, let's see, hairpins like this. You can slide those into the prongs on the end if you need to. But typically something like this, a veil would slide in really nicely there. All right, let's see. Jennifer says, as a new stylist who wants to specialize in bridal services, who all or what all should I be following for education, business, contracts, etc.? I feel beauty school did not prep me for any of this, and I'm not sure where to begin. Definitely going to be taking some of your classes. Yeah, so I actually have a how to start your bridal business class as well, because you're right, it is overwhelming. You learn none of this in bridal school. My particular course talks about, how to have contracts, how to just set your business up, how to get an LLC, all those things to get started. But I will just tell you, starting out, the biggest thing you can do, 1, practice, practice, practice. Watch people, practice on friends, practice on mannequin heads. If you're working in a salon, ask people if they want a free updo, as many as you can do to just really build and expand your repertoire. You just got to keep practicing. I started out by really offering, I just did weddings for free when I was starting out. I was 20, my friends were getting married, or dances, formal events, things like that. Anyone who wanted their hair styled, I would do it because I wanted to learn, I wanted to grow. So being able to do that is really helpful. As far as starting a business, you just want to make sure you have yourself kind of set up for the professional look before you even start. So I'll just tell you really briefly, get a one-page website, get a landing page. Don't just be on Facebook. You can find a landing page. If you Google it, you'll find it on Wix. You can find it on Squarespace. Lots of different places offer free landing pages. All you need to do is have your own name. You need to have prices. You need to have how to contact you, and have 4 or 5 solid pictures of your updo work. Having that landing page is going to help you, because you're going to have a website page then, and you can put that website on lots of different places like The Knot, Wedding Wire, places like Weddingly. All those places where brides are looking to find vendors usually offer free listings. So I would say, I have so much to say on that and not enough to say now, but I definitely have a lot of resources in my YouTube channel, on my website. I'm going to send you guys some more, so check for those in your inbox. But like I said, once you're just getting your feet wet and getting started, get the practice down, hone your skills in on a few updos that you really love, take good pictures of them, and just get the practice on people that you know and that are clients of yours, because you're right. You don't walk out of beauty school knowing wedding hair. You walk out of beauty school knowing a variety of things and knowing how to do a chignon and a French twist and a curly ponytail and pin curls, right? So those are great, but they're not really going to help you when you're actually sitting in front of a bride every weekend. So I hope that helped. I know that's a very short answer, but just stick around, stay in my Facebook group. I offer a lot of stuff like that. And then just look up, hashtag bridal business, bridal hair business. Look up those hashtags on Facebook or on Instagram. And you'll find more people too who are just giving a lot of great free information. So, okay, you guys, well, we are at an hour, 10 minutes. If you have more questions, feel free to email me, theupdocollective@gmail.com. You can reply to any of the Eventbrite emails that I sent you. I'm going to send you all these resources. I'll send you a replay So you guys have everything. Thank you so much for joining. I am so grateful, and I had so much fun teaching you this today. Like I said earlier too, I've got a YouTube channel with some free tips, tutorials, and I'll just give you as much information I can in your inbox. So make sure you check that, and we will see you next time. So thank you guys so much. And I hope to see you around. All right, bye.